Hello, folks, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It is October, at least here in Boston. It finally feels like fall. We got some nice, cool, crisp days and not some muggy summer rain. So it's a bit of a nice change. Hopefully, everyone else is having appropriate and enjoyable weather for your personal preferences and location. Welcome to Osquery. Let's see. Announcements and highlights since the last meeting. Well, we cut the 5.10 release, so that's pretty cool. And I think we had a problem with 5.10.0, so I then cut 5.10.1, but I no longer remember all the details. 5.10.1 exists. There's some packages. People could look at them. It's pretty cool. We can talk about that later on or not. Zach, it looks like you have a new webcam too. I don't know if that's a highlight or an announcement.
Yeah, I got my fancy webcam. Actually, I just haven't had it set up for a while, so it's just set up again. So 5.10.1, we'll push it to our beta channel then. Have you already pushed it to yours, Seth?
No. So one of the things I'm also doing right now is I'm rewriting a lot of the build and sign GitHub actions. And what I noticed today when I went to go push it is that the Windows zip things were not uploaded. So I just pushed up a PR and that'll probably be fixed within the next couple of hours.
Okay.
I just forgot to add those extensions when I rewrote the code.
Cool.
So depending on what your code uses to extract the Windows code, you may or may not run into an issue with that.
Yes, that I can't remember if we get it from the zips or if we extract it from the MSI somehow.
Yeah, I used to pull it out of the MSI and then I moved to the zips at some point. But and yeah, that'll be up by end of day today. I'll have that fixed.
Okay. Thanks.
And yeah, so if you want the MSI, well, it's there. And if you want the zips, they'll wait. And I guess I'll also mention that the MSI will change checksums because it'll get rebuilt as part of rebuilding the zips.
Okay, good to know.
So keep that in mind. Other worthwhile notes here are I think my rewrite of the GitHub sign and promote flow works. So if people want to review that over in the code sign repo, it's probably about ready for review. I basically took the old logic we had, split it into build and store in GitHub and promote into kind of the buckets, and converted some things from using the Python script to using the GitHub CLI, which now has more support than when this was first written.
Nice. So this is the Osquery code sign repo?
Yes. And there's only one pull request in it.
Got it.
Right now. So we keep that repo private because we kind of just don't want drive-by people monkeying in it. But if there's anyone that shows up to office hours and would like read access, I think we're happy to grant read access there. There's nothing secret per se. We just kind of didn't feel right having things out there for people to kind of throw PRs against. Yeah. Things like that. No, why are you not there? Okay, well, I'll have to focus on this PR because the zip file is not present and I don't know what's going on yet. And I don't think it'll be hard. I just can't have a meeting and do it at the same time. Yeah. So I don't know. That's I think that's everything I've done this week. Maybe we could also mention I am pretty sure. So libcurl and curl have announced that there is some very scary vulnerability that will be announced in the matter of days. As far as I know, we do not use curl. So despite having a table named curl, I don't think we care. But
we still use that. Is it Beast or something?
ooh, that's a good question. I have no idea what we use.
Stefano, do you remember?
We do use, yes, the HTTP client does use Boost Beast, but as far as I know, it doesn't use libcurl.
We don't have curl in our dependencies.
It's sorry.
We don't have curl in our dependencies.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But I wanted to mention it for folks that may be fielding customer requests over the next week about whether there are any vulnerabilities in Osquery.
Yes. Maybe we should tweet about it or something.
I don't.
Does anyone
Feels
use
like
Twitter
ambulance
anymore?
spacing in a way. Like what are you gonna say? Not our problem. Go away. I don't know how to say that.
Hey, well, we'll just expect that we might hear about it, and we'll answer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a little bit of a cop out, but I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. Yeah. I don't know. Other people have stuff going on. I feel like we don't really have quorum for a thorny issue that I'm still fighting with, but maybe.
Is the join? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the join issue. So the thing that so block devices and disk encryption. Oh man, that's a mess. We merged a thing which added basic context support to it. And then we reverted it because when we didn't have that, it didn't correctly find the LVM roots, so the data wasn't filled in completely. Okay, fine. But this means we're back at a point where if you query, if you query disk encryption queries block devices under the hood, and block devices, and if you call this in the wrong way, you can end up with a join that invokes disk encryption once per target. Like if you join mounts to disk encryption, you end up calling disk encryption's generate function n times, which means you call
like
block
n squared.
devices n squared. So you get an n squared, which, you know, on your machine, on a normal Linux machine with like one LVM, it's not that bad. But if you have, a pathological test device, it takes like 15 seconds to run.
Or maybe if you have like something that's a storage array.
Maybe. Or maybe if you were in a cloud and secretly all the disks were really EBS volumes that took a long time to enumerate.
Yeah.
So there are some gotchas here. And I think that there's sort of an immediate tactical question around the block devices table of whether we can actually support query context inside block devices or not.
Why can't we?
So I can pull Micah into one of these meetings at some point. He understands this a bit better.
Micah's the person at
Collide. He's one of the people who works for me. So disks can have parent and children volumes, right? And some information a child inherits from the parent. Like if you went to the manufacturer of a disk, and the disk is an LVM slice or a partition, you have to traverse up to find the parent.
Mm-hmm.
And for some places, like in disk encryption, the queries the underlying OS pings we use in disk encryption, when you query for a device, you get back what its parent is. So you can either say, am I encrypted? If not, is my parent encrypted? If not, traverse all the way up until I have no more parents. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So that's how disk encryption works now. For block devices, when you query something through UDEV, you don't get the parent back. So you have to sort of start at the top and query down instead of starting for what you want querying up.
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
Yes. So imagine you have a tree relationship.
Yeah.
You know, think of anything where you have a disk and then you have some children partitions, and maybe it's like 3 levels. Who knows? It doesn't matter.
Yes.
If you query for the child node, what your actual, here I am, this is slice X, partition Y, whatever.
Mhm.
If you query for that through the UDEV system, which is what we use for block devices, you don't get the parent. So you can't traverse up the tree to find the parent information.
Mm.
So you don't get something like the manufacturer and the model number and other things. You just kind of get, oh, I'm slice 37. Like,
Okay.
what does that mean? So block devices starts by querying the base information and then going down the tree.
Okay.
Which is why, so adding query context.
Oh, so you're saying if you
devices,
add the query context, then you can't actually get all of the data.
Yeah, exactly.
So is what you're getting at here basically that like people just need to not write the queries that way? Or is there a
I'm
reason?
enumerating problems we have today, and I am not yet at the point where we have solutions.
Okay.
So one problem we have is that block devices using the tools we have today does not obviously support a way to implement query context reliably.
Yeah.
Mike and I have sort of talked about some ideas where you could say, well, let's query for this device. And if this data comes back nil, then we know it's a child, and let's start guessing what the parent is. That's kind of messy. It doesn't feel good yet. So we don't love that.
I mean, it's it sounds like it's an optimization basically, right?
It's an optimization.
How badly does it need to be done?
I don't know. Not enough that I held the 5.10 release.
I'm imagining that you've run into a real life scenario where this is causing problems.
I'm aware of 2.
Okay.
So one of them comes to us from Uptix, and what Uptix says is that on some of their customer cloud machines, enumerating block devices is horrifically slow because it involves network calls. So things like anything backed by an EBS volume or a GCS volume ends up, it tries to enumerate block devices. This pulls in network calls, and like all you really want is information about one, right? Like I just want this one, and it's busy fetching network about like 17 user mounts. I don't know. I don't have those computers. So I think they locally run a patch that implements query context for them. Which probably has all the same bugs that we saw with it because the code's actually the same.
Okay.
So that may be a trade-off they're willing to make. I'm not sure we want to, so I don't know yet. The other place where I have run into this is if you join disk encryption against mounts, you trigger this n-squared problem.
Yep.
So if you have like 5 mounts, that actually potentially becomes noticeable. You're like, wait, why did this take 5 seconds? That's weird. So there's some oddities there. But I think that the better route, so I think there are 2 problems that Osquery should be looking at solving. One of them is it possible to implement query table in block devices? We may decide it's not. I don't know yet. The other one is more sprawling, which is that there's something not right in the way indexes, table generation, joins, and everything manifests, because we see this n-squared problem throughout, and it's come up over the last several years several times. what this comes up, we see this in, if you run a query, select star from table where X in 1, 2, 3, you will invoke the generate function 3 times. And this comes up for if you use in and if you use a join. Joins trigger this behavior as well.
Does it always do that?
I'm not sure on the joins. It may depend on exactly which join and how the optimizer comes out, but I think in always triggers it.
If it's on a primary key, it does, because it expects that each query returns a single value. So I think the base logic is actually more done for not non-virtual tables where you don't have that higher cost we have in calling some logic, but instead just retrieving that single row from a database that is on disk, etc., or partially in memory already.
Yeah, and in testing this round, Micah and I did not observe that primary index, additional index, or cacheable change this behavior. And this feels like a bug somewhere deep in our world. It has come up several times, and at different points in time, people have thought it was fixed. Like Teddy, we have GitHub records of Teddy saying he thinks this isn't a bug, or he thinks it's like not the behavior at hand. And whether it once didn't behave that way or regressed or Teddy is wrong, I don't know. Those details are not recorded.
I think, though, he was talking only about the in operator, not the join itself, because I think the join is again somewhat expected from SQLite. Like, I cannot point you to a specific reasoning for that, but yeah, even I think the issue you linked where Teddy said those words, I think it was again referring only to the in one, which again it would make more sense because you have all the values there in the query itself, so you can pass them all together immediately.
I also know, I remember this from an office hours because it's a thing I noticed in the Go code, right? Collide writes a lot of Go extensions, and I've noticed we write a lot of code to handle being passed a query context with multiple things in it. I have never actually seen that happen in practice. Generate just gets called multiple times, but here I am writing for loops into all of my tables. That's probably true for yours too, Zach. If you write
do we think that SQLite claims to actually pass all of that, or does SQLite just expect that you actually just call the generate function multiple times?
So we're really weird because we're not, right? SQLite is written to assume that you actually have something on disk. We don't. We also are creating eponymous tables, which means the create, there's a create and a connect call. So in SQLite proper, like the normal way you would do this is you would do some expensive work in create, and then connect kind of connects to your table. Because we're an API translation layer, we use the same thing for create and connect, which makes us an eponymous virtual table and has slightly different semantics. So, in a world where we might want different kinds of caching behavior, you could imagine doing things in a create that initialize things and then connect basically as a lighter weight generate call, but that's like a really deep refactoring in how we think about tables. So some of this just hits this. It just doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is stuff we can fix with our indexing. Alex Malone had a PR up a long time ago, which I dug up, which purports to solve this, but I haven't absorbed what he's doing. I'm actually going to throw Micah at that pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah. So N+1s, great. I think this is also related to, a while ago, Stefano built a cache layer for the Windows users and groups, which is like another way to solve a similar problem here.
And And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if the table implementations are efficient at generating a single or a result with a single constraint, then there's actually not an issue, right? It's
I think that's correct.
the issue really comes when you have tables that are not efficient about generating a single one. So specifically this sort of disk encryption mounts example.
Yeah, exactly correct. Yeah. And even if it was efficient, maybe it would be more efficient if you could fetch them all at once. That's certainly something I see in my Go code, you know, but at that point you're down in like a 10% problem, not like a 400% problem.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So,
and in the case of this specific query with disk encryption and mounts, like,
yeah,
do they have to be joined like that?
I'm not sure they do. I think there are probably workarounds. Stefano mentioned you could make a materialized view is one thing. I imagine we could chuck a subselect in, right? Because subselect also shifts the way the query planner works.
Sometimes. I mean, the query planner is free to rearrange things.
But across a subselect boundary is weird. So I don't know for sure.
It might do what you want. I'm not saying it won't.
So I'm not. This didn't seem worth holding 5.10 for, right? Fundamentally, what we've shipped is better than what we have today. 5.9 has the same n squared problems.
Every version ever has that issue. Basically,
well, maybe. I'm not sure that it wasn't fixed in the past and that it didn't change.
Oh, and you think there may have been a regression?
I think that Teddy thinks it once worked, so I wonder if he's always been wrong or if it once worked.
I would say very distant past, because I mean, for the join, I'm pretty sure it always worked like that, at least when you join between primary or additional, so basically index additional.
Right, but if there's no index on the target table, then it shouldn't do this.
Sorry, come again?
But if there's no index on the target table,
wait a second, on the target, but what about on the source? It's still.
I'd expect the query planner to know what it's doing. Right? If there's no index on the target, the query planner should fetch the whole target and do a sequential scan in RAM.
Yeah. I mean, specifically for that one, I do recall that it was supposedly working like that. I mean, I do recall working like that when I tested it years ago. So yes, if now is also doing that without primary keys, then that's an issue. Yes, that's different. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the thing is, I don't know. I don't remember like the Osquery 2 days, and I barely remember the Osquery 3 days. So I don't know. I could believe this changed. I know we've tweaked the indexing behaviors and the generators, and I know we've upgraded SQLite. So,
I mean, I was in the 4 eras, in the 4X days, so I recall it being different. So something between, like when between the new version, the 4 version, and today has changed, I think. But yeah, the easiest way probably is just to try to install the first 4 Osquery 4 version, run with the planner and see what happens. Yeah.
There should be container images for some older versions.
I mean, we can also download the binaries.
Oh yeah, and the binaries are there. Oh, so that's not hard.
Linux is pretty stable. Yeah, so I don't have anything. I don't have any conclusions here. I'm starting to understand the problem, and given that it caused a lot of chaos at the end of that release, I thought I would try and explain it.
This might be a little hacky, but can you use stat or read link to populate that parent for the block?
So if you're talking about how do you add query context into block devices, it's not clear how. So Micah played a little bit with, can we just like traverse up the minor major things, and that didn't seem to work. They don't exist in a consistent enough path either, so I'm not sure that we can hit file system or proc level. That may be something to explore. There may also be other libraries, like UDEV may not expose this, but maybe something else does. I don't know if we can do something where we like look at some top level. I don't know.
That's fair.
It's you could find there's an issue somewhere and ask.
Okay.
I filed it recently, and then felt silly because I think I filed the same thing 3 times at least. But
the LSBLK utility list block does use the file systems syscalls, doesn't use UDEV. Though I'm not sure if there are cases where maybe doing a list on some of the files may trigger some network requests, although it's the kernel file system. So
I think I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say LSBLK though is doing everything, so it may be able to start at the top and traverse down. And I don't know if if you start down, you may miss something. I don't know if you can go in both directions.
Oh, well, no, you still have to go, like, you still have to construct the tree, but if there, at least it doesn't create a problem maybe with network disks, because it doesn't, like, the tree is actually already constructed on the file system. So the other thing is that technically system D should have a cache constructed by, like, the system should, as far as I recall, I think that the system should have already a tree. Like you use UDEV ADM, which should be able to actually query again what's being cached by the system, because that is then updated by the UDEV events in the system.
There's something in the block devices that I don't know enough about UDEV, but there's actually like a rescan call in there, I think.
Yeah, so that's different. So I think the problem is that with UDEV, again, it has to construct everything from scratch. I don't think it's using any cache from the system. It's actually, and actually it should be accessing the system too. I forgot. Sorry, I forgot. But what I was trying to say is that if our solution is to build a cache, then the question is, how do you update that cache? Because if a disk gets added or removed, either you do that on an interval, but is the interval enough too often? So the other possible plans would be, again, to query the system for its view. The only issue there is that I haven't seen the code, but there probably is a protocol, which means different distribution versions may have changed that protocol. So we would have to kind of hand roll the support for different versions of that protocol, assuming it has changed.
I feel like if we wanted to build a cache, I would want the cache to be scoped to the lifetime of the query. And I don't know what we expose for that yet. And like we have a table spec parameter called cacheable, which I find very confusing and unclear what it actually does. So that's like an area that maybe research needed. You know, what does this do, and can it be expanded to cover some of these bases?
A lifetime of the query cache makes some sense to me. I mean, it would have to be really careful about how it was implemented, especially considering how like some tables are, if what they return is affected by the query constraints and that kind of thing. Like a file table, for example, where no constraints means nothing, with constraints means
Anything.
it means something or potentially something. So yeah, there's definitely some challenges there. I also, the cacheable thing, I feel like I have a memory that there used to be a thing where if like the same scheduled query ran with the exact same SQL syntax, like in rapid succession, then it wouldn't actually regenerate the query results. It would just
Yeah, I bet
return the
you're right.
cache data or something like that.
That sounds plausible because I think the actual docs cite schedule nonsense, and I keep wanting it to be about like query context because that's my usual pain point.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something here. Like I would kind of be opposed to trying to implement I don't know, building something that like watched for disks and just like regenerated the cache every minute. Just sounds, I don't want to do it. It feels like the wrong pattern. So I don't know. I hope we can figure out either a way to make a per query cache, or where would that live? Like maybe we can hang that inside query context somehow, pass a pointer around to like a cache object, so you know a table can basically just get the query context and stash things in it, and then you know hope it gets the same one back later on or something. But I mean that's the Go answer, right? I don't know what the C++ one is.
I mean, I think the issue mostly is SQLite is, yeah, has always been a bit difficult to associate like top level query session, like thinking sessions, like you are launching a query that has many subselects or whatever, and you want the whole thing to feel like one.
Yeah. Do we? I don't know enough about it. Does SQL, like, what is Osquery the root, or is SQLite must be the root? Because like if I'm in an interactive session, I guess what I'm saying is if I wanted to associate a UUID, where would I even start? Like what creates query context?
So sorry, go ahead. Oh. I mean, as far as I know, when you like start from a query, you create the query, ask to run the query, then it jumps to SQLite, which then goes to the virtual table definition, which is again Osquery. So we wrote that code, and in that code we construct the query context when the filter function decides which constraint to use. And then SQLite has a data structure that permits you, for instance, so there is some concept of a session, I would say, because it lets you, for instance, return, like fill in an error. But I don't recall if there is a more generic data structure, like even a void pointer that you can use for user data.
I wonder if there's a pragma something or other, like a session, or like commits the wrong level, right? You wouldn't want to make this like a SQLite commit, but I wonder if there's something kind of in that space.
I mean, there's, I don't know about for the interactive like Osquery I, but for Osquery D, both scheduled queries and distributed queries are triggered from Osquery code, and so it seems like there would be some opportunity to set some sort of context that for what query is executing, if you did want to use that for some sort of caching thing. I'm not sure. I think we do use the SQLite shell code, although I think we maybe actually copy paste that
We,
code
we have
in?
a copy of that code from some time ago.
Yeah.
It's diverged because it's got commits in it, and
Sure.
I know it has bugs. Um, so I think in theory we could basically shim whatever we wanted in there.
So I think it is probably possible to some way record a context for kind of all of the different places that queries run if we really wanted to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, true. You can do it. It has to be thread local because also distributed queries. But yeah, otherwise you can, yeah, save something. And since you are on the same thread when when SQLite calls you back into the virtual table logic, not yet in the generate, but yeah, in the filtering, you can from there identify which query you are running.
Yeah. I mean, if
Which I think cached might actually work with that. But yeah.
I could certainly imagine like creating a GUID at time, right? But I just don't know where to pass that because we probably like it. I feel like it has to. I'm not sure it's obvious in the generates. Just having read the SQLite method signatures, like nothing jumped out at me, which makes me think it has to land in like a pragma kind of like something in the user session. So I just don't know what that looks like inside.
So I don't think it's necessary. Like Zach was saying, so Osquery does a function call to SQLite to execute a query. Before that, you generate just before
You're
that.
just thinking like a global thing in the thread, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Because anyway, if it's the same thread anyway that will run the table, so you can retrieve the thing from memory. Yeah.
Doesn't sound bad if it works. I wonder, I only have one place that I know needs it right now, but like I'm sure there are others.
So you did like a little for me. Could you?
I said I only know one table that really needs that, but I'm sure we'd find others over time.
No, there are definitely, and at the same time, I know that some tables have not been written with multiple constraint values in mind. I think maybe somewhat recent tables, because due to that different behavior, I think we have noticed that it didn't really return multiple values, so they have been written with a single value in mind. But yeah, those will have to be updated.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else on this topic. Thank you all for letting me show you the delightful rat hole that is n-squared queries.
Definitely curious to hear what Micah finds when they look into Alex Malone's old PR.
Yeah, there's some other stuff we've got to do in Collide before I can free that time. But Alex is the last person I remember really nosing around this part of our code base. I don't know if anyone else remembers anyone else doing it, but Alex used to play in that area a lot.
No, I did change. The last change, I think, was specifically around index. And actually, wait a second. I do recall when I said that index is necessary. Sorry, I think that the last thing he did was connected to the fact that at least the join with a primary key should have no, sorry, that the joiner without a primary key should have not pulled multiple times the table. because we used to put index as a constraint on columns that were not actually being filtered or handled by the table logic itself. And so he did some change in the virtual table logic and some cleanup on the schema definitions, removing index true on some columns that were not actually being filtered. Because again, when you put index true, here the other thing, SQLite expects again that you return a single row, because index also says that columns identifies a row as unique.
Yeah.
It's what identifies the row as unique, either index or the concatenation of all the columns that has additional, etc.
I remember updating all of those tables to remove index true. But I don't remember what change prompted it. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in our code.
Yeah, I was seeing there was something about also behavior of index with extensions. So there's that to request, but let's see, advert index not implemented.
I feel like at the end of the day,
so yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say I feel like at the end of the day, I'm just going to end up with a giant pile of issues and, half PRs for like future investigation and follow-up.
So that PR, the last PR change actually just changes the tables definition schema, but okay, wait. There is yet another PR that I recall. It did change also the.
There's 6104 is in the same vein.
So this is like yeah. But this is more. I don't think it's necessarily related on how the call happens. It is just that, yeah, again, additional needed another column to be indexed, or maybe the index attribute on the same column for that constraint to be passed each time to the query. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I'm at this point I'm also wondering, does SQLite actually support passing multiple constraints in a single X-filter call?
I don't know. It's a great question. The Osquery code has always assumed that it does. which makes me think that we probably at
Yeah.
some point verified that it can. It's a really good question.
I mean, yeah, we can pass multiple constraints, sorry, but not multiple, maybe not multiple values for the same constraint. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I got nothing. I think one of the things that's also a little bit hard to tell is we have many layers here, and it's sometimes hard to understand, like, what is the ideal behavior, but then how much of what we see is our own changes in the way we generate and the way we invoke things, and we're pretty far off the well-trod path, I think.
That we are.
And I don't know if we have a simpler pattern that we can use, or if, well, that's the life of a 10-year-old software project. So are we 10 now?
Close. 2014.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think it was about mid 2014 this project started.
Long time. Long time. Like get log says July 30th. So I guess we're a little over 9 years.
Wow.
Cool.
Well, I'm gonna push 5.10.1 to Fleet's beta channel.
Okay, I'll end up getting it out to Collide in the next couple of days, but I said I have to fix the zip builds first.
Sounds good. Yeah, and and I kicked off our workflow, by the way, and it does use the MSI, so we are not blocked.
Cool. Yeah, I used to use the MSIs, and I forget why we moved it to zip at some point. Maybe so that I could drop the 7-zip dependency or something, or the cab extract.
Yeah, right. Makes sense. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Everyone.
Thank you all, and enjoy splunking through index and filter functions or something. See
Bye.
you.